Hello everyone, this is Venom Geek Media here, and today for this video I was going to talk about my, if you like, Games Workshop story. So this is kind of just going to be me talking about Games Workshop and my experience with it, and ultimately why I've stopped buying it or playing it really. So yeah, and the kind of the hopes that if any of you, my viewers, are, they will understand, and also, follow by example, because I was, quite fortunate to get out, I think. Um, anyway, so to start, basically, from a very young age, I was into miniature collecting. This was partly from my father, who was a miniature collector himself. He did Napoleonics. He also did Lord of the Rings, which is crucial because when I was little, the Lord of the Rings films were coming out, so it was quite a big thing, and I really liked them. And I thought, oh, okay, so I could get models, and Games Workshop put out the models, so it was almost quite a natural progression. Um, my dad obviously was back in the was collecting back in the 70s, before Games Workshop was a big thing. I know what you're saying. Yeah, big thing. Before the Lord of the Rings films were a thing. Again, that's quite hard to imagine, but yeah, there was a time when that was so. So anyway, yeah. And so I did a bit of collecting Lord of the Rings, building up an army, and then steadily, I bought the magazine originally just for the Lord of the Rings stuff, but then also I started to be taken in by their 40k range, particularly the Eldar. The Eldar were just awesome in my perspective, and still are to this day. They're my favourite race. They're just so cool. I love their aesthetic and design and just everything about them. They look so awesome. They're basically space ninja elves. It's ridiculously awesome. And I really, really like that. I didn't really care for those, blocky, stupid-looking space marines, but I did like the Eldar a lot. And I kind of went on along with this for a while, and then it was back in, when was it? I don't know, a long time ago now, and I met other people who were also into 40k, and I was like, okay, I could have a battle. So I started collecting Eldar, and I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed collecting my army, painting my figures, and doing battles. It was really good. Um, this was really fun. I actually met a lot of new people doing it as well, going to games clubs, and that was really nice. The people I met were really cool. But, this is also where things begin to turn sour, because it was at this point that Games Workshop began to make decisions that I felt were seriously wrong. Just seriously, seriously wrong. The main one was Citadel Finecast, where they moved all of their metal figures to resin. Now, in some aspects, I understand the decision, and actually it was very good. For big figures, big metal figures, this was a great decision, because before assembling them was an absolute pain in the arse, and with them being resin, it was all of a sudden much easier. So that was a good thing in some aspect. And yeah, they brought out detail better. What was not so good was the price hike from about £8 per blister pack to £14. That's like a £6 leap. It's ridiculous. I'm guessing it was even more for the Yanks. So that was ridiculous, and also price has gone up on most figures actually. And before you could get a pack of 20 or a pack of Metal Elites for about 18 to 20 pounds. Sorry, 18 pounds. Then it goes up to 20 pounds. Then it goes up to 24 pounds, steadily increasing. So yes, Finecast. was quite the disappointment. Like I say, overpriced. And there were numerous issues. For starters, the resin would warp. You had to clean it. It was much more of a faff to prepare than metal, and the figures really weren't as good quality. So I really wasn't too keen on the whole thing, really. But I accepted it. I thought, yeah, okay, you know what? That's fine. Moved on. Um, One thing that frustrated me was the overpriced literature, the rulebooks, and the fact that you had to buy a separate bloody fucking codex. Which is incredibly frustrating, and was incredibly frustrating, because, you know what, not all of us can bloody afford that. So it was very annoying. To add to that, I also found that 40k was a weighted game. It was very, very easy for people to win with Space Marines. Nearly impossible for anyone to beat the Space Marines if they were on the same skill level and playing as aliens. It just wasn't going to happen. So yeah, the unbalance was incredibly frustrating, but you know, I kept playing because I enjoyed it. Anyway, so then there's Finecast, and then other things start happening. We get, was it 6th edition? I think it was 6th edition rules. These are new, interesting rules, quite dynamic. I didn't mind the changes too much, though I felt it did overcomplicate the game just a teensy weensy bit. So there were and there were lots of problems with that edition of rules, which I found ridiculous. And of course, that meant new codexes for everyone, which everyone had to bloody buy, which is ridiculous. So that was also intensely annoying, as you can well imagine. So yeah, then you had that, and then also just you could see things being wheeled out, things like flyers and such. They were quite nice models, actually. I didn't mind the flyers. What I didn't like was getting rid of Apocalypse. Apocalypse was an awesome, awesome expansion that enabled people to use fucking huge models. It was awesome. What did we get instead? Knights, but that comes later. So that intensely annoyed me. Then we get the decrease in the size of packs and the increasing of price. Not necessarily in 40k, but critically in the Lord of the Rings line. You could get a box of 24 Uruk-hai for about 18 quid. Now you would have to pay about 20 quid for a box of 10. Now what the fuck happened there? That was bloody ridiculous. I just had enough at that point. It was very, very frustrating and very annoying, and it was clearly a price hike. I then really didn't like also the fact that they came out with pretty much a year after or 2 years after, not bloody long is all I recall, 7th edition, another edition of rules. And they were putting out rule books now, apparently, at a rate of 2 years. Far too much. And I just thought, no, this is bloody ridiculous at the moment. This is, fucking insane. No, no, no. I am not going to continue with this anymore. I just had enough. I thought, no, I'm not. I'm just going to play these rules. Then came, obviously, Knights, these essentially pseudo-titans in all but name, and it was basically evident that whoever had the Knights would win. There was that really frustrated me, and it was really annoying because you could tell they basically wanted you to buy the new stuff. The new stuff would be the most powerful stuff in the game. So it was a completely broken game. It was already fairly broken, but they broke it even more and completely unbalanced the whole bloody thing. They really, anyone who took a look at the rules could see that from a mile off. So yeah, and 40k continued to decline, and it was expensive. It was complicated. It was too complicated, really, and ultimately, a lot of people that I played it with stopped playing. Because we had all just had enough. They were also all a bit older and wiser than me, and they were aware of a lot of the dodgy business practices of Games Workshop buying its own stocks in order to keep the price up, in order to make itself look good, when in fact its sales are down. There were numerous other things that Games Workshop did, but it was really evident to me as well that they were exploiting their customer base. They were thinking, oh, we don't need a new customer base. We'll just, keep milking money out of, the ones we have. When, that's not really a good way to acquire a customer base. A lot of my friends moved on to playing Drop Zone Commander because it was very accessible, very cheap, and relatively easy to play. And get into a much cheaper alternative, with very similar themes to 40k. But the game was much more balanced. One thing that baffles me in 40k was the turn system that seems to have remained unchanged since the dark ages of time, wherein one person does an entire move and then the other person does an entire move. I thought that was just completely and utterly ridiculous. You know, I thought it was just so stupid because essentially it meant that in a turn you could be decimated or you could win. It was ridiculous, and your enemy has no chance of fighting back. So I really, really wasn't too bloody keen on that whole thing. And that was something that really frustrated me constantly throughout 40k, and it made it less fun to play. So it got to the point where, I stopped playing 40k. Because it was, overpriced, and I didn't like the business decisions Games Workshop were making. I didn't want to support them anymore, simply put. And really, their models aren't that great. So, you say, well, what did you do? What did you do? What did you do without 40k? Believe it or not, there's a fuck ton of other stuff out there. There are numerous other manufacturers. You just have to look. It's not difficult. Break out that Google and look for other manufacturers. There are plenty who will do very similar things to what has already been done in 40k, because Games Workshop weren't, original in that. They're pretty similar. They were, quite original in the amount of fluff they added. They added a lot of fluff to the material. That's what made it so appealing, the depth of the story. But ultimately, they weren't, original in the basic concept. Space elves, space orcs, space this, space that, They were, equally copying from fantasy. So there's plenty of fantasy miniatures you can get. And there's a lot more freedom in that. You can choose, which manufacturer to buy, because these things aren't copyrighted. You can't copyright orc or a troll or a space soldier. You can't copyright those things because they are public domain ideas. You can copyright Eldar, Space Marines in particular, but ultimately you just call it something else and say, well, that's a public domain designation, and that's fine. So yeah, that's really good, really good. So you have choice. You can go for the more expensive, higher quality models, or you can go for, getting a lot of really cheap but lower quality models. You have that option in front of you. Whereas at Games Workshop, you just have to accept whatever they think is quality, which isn't always that great. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it isn't. It's a balance. So there's that. You have a lot more options. It's generally a much more open community. You do get a lot of variety of people in 40k. Some of people who are just so rigid and stiff with like the rules and all that sort of thing. Oh, you can't use that as that or whatever. Oh, that's not got a thing on it and you're using it for that. But pain in the arse. Anyway, also, none of this stuff can ever be. A lot of this stuff can't be copyrighted. So what do I do instead of 40k? I do Napoleonics. What's great about that? They can't keep adding figures. They can't create None of the manufacturers can create, an arms race in the way Games Workshop does, with its new releases all the time, um, which was just utterly ridiculous. Um, and it was just an absolute arms race. I need to get this, and I need to get this. He's got Terminators, I need this. It was ridiculous. I thought it was bloody stupid. And so, but there's none of that because, you can't exactly make up historical things, can you? And, there's also an openness about the rules. You can pick and choose what rules you like, or even invent your own if you're willing to put in the time. And, people are going to be a little more willing to use them. Then, if you turn up to 40k and play with your own experimentals and say, no, you heathen, fuck off. That's not always true. Some people are very open, others aren't, though. So there's that. And yeah, and also the community is generally a lot more open. And you have, like I say, you have those options. And you learn. Yeah, okay, it's cool reading about the fluff behind the Eldar and all that, and I did enjoy it, but I actually learned a lot more collecting Napoleonics. I learned a lot more about Europe and history and all that sort of thing. And so as a tool of learning, it's pretty good. It's a great way to learn stuff, That being said, and when it's all said and done, do I still retain some of my 40k stuff? Yeah. There are some pieces which, simply put, I'll never sell because they are quite treasured to my heart for whatever reason. It might be because they have sentimental value, or got them as a birthday present, or whatever. Or particularly, I'm very proud of those models. So, for example, I went to the expense of buying a Phoenix bomber from Forge World, and I adore that model to death. There is nothing in this world which I so prize. I sound a bit material. Amongst my 40k stuff, that is probably my pride and joy. Will I ever play a game of 40k again? Maybe, maybe not. But I keep those models because, I like them, and I enjoy looking at them, and they have a lot of sentimental value to me. But so I like that, and I like the models, and I liked the game. I didn't like Games Workshop in any way, shape, or form, and so that's kind of why I stopped playing. And I would urge you to do the same. Just expand your mind, go out of your comfort zone, and look beyond 40k, because then you'll find there's an incredible range, because there's just such an incredible range of possibilities that you never even thought of, and it's so good and so much fun to dive into this, and there's just as much a community there as in 40k. So that's really all I wanted to say. This is Venom Geek Media. Thank you for listening.